So I am Nubella May Allison, and you are
Noah.
you are
I'm Noah.
Noah Dahi, and our page is called Pain's Full Process, and we've been trying to connect to record this first video for what it seems like has been forever, but life has been happening.
Yeah.
Either times you were ready, I wasn't feeling well, I was ready, you weren't feeling well. Things that were happening with my mom, and then my mom passed. So there's a list, right? But we wanted to do this for a while, so I think it's important that we do it, number one, and not try to wait till everything is perfect. Because I think we're, as you can see, we're not recording in the space that you wouldn't know, but this is not the space that we ideally wanted to record in. I have an office that I was going to turn into a studio. That hasn't happened yet. I wanted things for both of us to be more set for me, but authentically speaking, what our process is about is the process. It is about what life is like when you're dealing with life, dealing with a chronic illness, etc. So, having said all that, this video is titled, or going to be titled, From Near Death to New Life, Accepting the Pain. So before we even jump into that, as he's thumbing through these cookbooks, we're recording upstairs in my mom's old apartment as we rummage through everything and look for new recipes and stuff. But
apparently this is Betty Crocker's first cookbook.
Is it? We'll see what we can find.
This is the original one from the 50s, it says in there.
Is it? Okay, that's cool.
Or, I mean, it's supposed to be a remake of it, but it is like representation of the original.
A representation. Okay, I got you. That's cool. So I guess we should.
Like, look, the designs and everything in it. Like
we'll find something that we can do, and then I can convert it into gluten-free.
Yeah, not with this book.
So let's introduce ourselves. Tell them, you already said who you are. What are the things that the challenges that you are experiencing? And I'll talk about my challenges or what types of chronic illnesses we've been dealing with. And then we can jump into the sort of beginning, for you at least, for when you how you found out with the whole swine flu near death thing.
Or we can start from the end.
We're still
Star Wars.
we're not in the end. We're in the process.
Right?
Okay.
Right?
All right, go ahead, shoot. Because we're gonna watch the time, because between the two of us, we could probably talk forever, and that's a whole nother story, how our relationship has been repaired. Yeah. But tune in and you'll hear more about that. But go. You talk about what is the illness that you are conquering, if I can put it in that way.
Well, not very many people know about this. Sickle cell. Other name, sickle cell anemia, sickle beta thalassemia.
Well, it
goes by different terms, but there's different versions of it
there's sickle cell.
I would just say the one that I have, but nobody really.
Because a lot of people don't even know what beta thalassemia is. I didn't know what beta thalassemia was either. We knew what sickle cell disease was. So you have sickle beta thalassemia, which is, you got the sickle gene from me, and then
beta thalassemia
from your father,
which is another blood disorder.
So sorry, but you got you got
20 years later.
21 years later. Right?
My bad about that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I must have mixed up some ingredients in there.
No, but you know what though? The odd thing about that is that your father and I, we got tested, like, to see if we had that, because of course, being African American, to
Yeah.
people of West African descent, you
Yeah.
know that typically Black people carry that sickle. Is it a sickle gene? Should I say gene
Yeah, I
or
feel like they
DNA?
said it's carried primarily in African genes
In African
and Asian
genes. Asian also? Okay.
Yeah.
So we knew that. And so I was tested for the sickle gene. He was tested. So it showed that I had sickle, but he didn't. So I don't think anybody was testing further for beta thalassemia.
That's
I had
like
never.
The chart that you learn about in what is it, biology?
Oh, the recessive, dominant, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So we thought we were in the clear, but then when, you know, after you give birth to a baby, they prick the baby on the heel and collect blood. That's how they find out.
So then he didn't know he had beta thalassemia then.
He was, because I don't have sickle cell. I'm
yeah, you have the trait though.
I have the trait. He has the trait.
But I'm saying the trait is what leads to it, right?
So you can be a carrier of the trait and not have the disease. Pardon me. This is my drug of choice.
No,
gum.
You say that. That's funny.
This gets me through gum and some hot tea with honey. All right, now proceed.
It's better than a lot of people's morning routines. So.
Okay, so
I think even better than coffee. Actually, no, a lot of people are gonna hate me for that.
Yeah, you can't cancel coffee.
How about this? No, people hate
I
me
drank
for this.
coffee. I drank coffee the other day on purpose. Like
Really?
I'm not a coffee drinker, but I just was like, let me.
How about this? I like 7-Eleven coffee over.
Don't. All right. So sickle beta thalassemia,
Yeah.
right? We found out at birth when they did the thing.
Mm.
We were kind of confused, so we didn't really believe it or whatever. But
Yeah.
that is what you were diagnosed with, right?
Mm.
Any other things that you
Apparently asthma. Remember?
asthma? Okay.
I mean, I could go into that a little bit.
Anything as a result of sickle cell? Do you feel that
100%?
Yeah.
Well, resulting in what essentially?
I mean, what other things in terms of chronic pain or illness? For people that are not familiar with sickle cell disease, what does that call? What does that do? Explain to them what it is and what it does in your body.
Well, sickle cell essentially is when the cells in your body, the way your cells are produced is through your bone marrow, and that is how you get blood within your body. So when your red blood cells are being produced within your body, they're not produced fully like a circle shape like this. Mm-hmm. They're instead a crescent shape or a half shape, mm-hmm. a sickle shape, which is like that basically. Mm-hmm. And then when you have a sickle cell crisis, it's just when a lot of those cells, the sickle shaped cells, are being produced in your body. Okay. And when you're having a really bad crisis, it's due to more of those cells being produced. Than normal cells in your body. Okay. So you'll either have an imbalance, which will cause an imbalance in the hemoglobin, oxygen levels, iron.
So then your organs and stuff are not getting the right amount of oxygen that they need. Yeah. And so when you say
hemoglobin specifically is the bonding, what helps bond the blood. Mm-hmm. Oh well, the whole blood itself. Right. Because blood is not really like. It's made up of a bunch of different things. Right. We just see it as a liquid, but it's different components of blood. So what is that? Because people hear, a crisis, right? So if they're not familiar with somebody that has sickle cell, what does that mean? Like when you're having a crisis or you're in that situation? I would relate it to pain. It's generally not, but most of the time when somebody with sickle cell, I can say for myself, when you're having a crisis, you associate it with like severe pain. Like the more pain you're experiencing, the deeper the crisis is. But it's just basically your body is having a reaction to the way it's producing the cells, and
the blood is not flowing. So does it feel?
Sometimes it's not flowing correctly, and it stops in a certain area. Sometimes it's flowing through that area, but it's a lot of bad cells that are just going.
So what does the pain feel like?
I mean, you can go online and look this up. It's related to stabbing, slicing, anything. But for me personally, I would say it's severe pins and needles that turns into soreness beyond comparison. Like it's almost like you can't move or utilize the arm. Like it makes it like
because you can't move it because it's that painful.
That painful. It's not
Gotcha.
like you can't.
So it's kind of debilitating.
Debilitating
almost.
almost.
Right.
Like it's like the pain gets so intense that like there's a point where it's like sometimes if you just let it go, it gets really bad to the point where like you can't move your arm. You can't. It almost gets numbing.
Okay.
And that's when you know it's really bad, because then like
That
once
you can't even.
Yeah, you can't like at that point you can't really move.
Right.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's just like you try to move your arm and you can't move.
Forgive us because we're gonna laugh at things that probably are not funny to anybody else. But humor has been the way
helps.
that we have coped
helps.
with things. At least now, I don't know if early on.
The blood clot. No, when I had the blood clot, I could describe that, because the blood clot, I literally couldn't move my arm.
Right.
But then with sickle cell, it feels like that sometimes because the pain is so intense that in certain spots, it feels like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that.
So tell them, I'm assuming there's a them. I hope people are. I hope that what we talk about.
If you're still watching, subscribe,
like, all the stuff.
And thank you.
I guess tell them what that has meant in your life in terms of, as a result of that pain, what happens. Like, I know I can speak from being a parent, being told that if you even get a fever over 101, I need to take you to the emergency room, right? As a baby, it was like, at a certain age, you were supposed to be on antibiotics for like the first 5 years of life to protect you, which I decided not to do and decided to do some other things because I just felt like that wasn't giving you a fighting chance.
I think that's probably one of the most beneficial things.
You think?
No, well, now I notice it because I didn't understand the full concept of how antibiotics work. Apparently, when you use them too much, they're not beneficial. They're not.
Yeah, your body.
Which means that the whole.
So then I was like, I don't think that.
And I don't even think you were thinking about that for effect too. Maybe because maybe you knew
a little bit, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think I kind of was a little bit, but I kind of want. You know what? Let's pause right there because I kind of want to jump right into the near death because we're talking about this now as though you always knew you had sickle cell, even though we knew, meaning your parents.
Yeah.
You didn't know what you had until about
late till middle school.
10?
When you were in middle school?
No, you were still at Babylon.
Oh yeah,
you were still at the Christian school.
So it was the end of there going into middle school. That whole phase of my life. I feel
like you were 10 or 11 for some reason. So this is the near-death experience. So this is, I want to say about 10 years old. You had gotten sick and it seemed like a normal cold or whatever at first. You had a fever, and most of the time I would bring you, or I would kind of see depending on your symptoms.
Was this after I got the flu shot?
This was the one time after that because before I wasn't letting you get the flu shot. I was like, no, I didn't. I have my own thoughts about certain shots, but anyway, so this was the one time you got it, and you kept like getting sicker and sicker, and we're trying to hydrate you, but you weren't kind of looking that great. And I was just like, but there's times that you would bounce back out of things, and it didn't see, you weren't like necessarily caught. There wasn't anything that, I don't know how to put it, but there wasn't anything that made me feel like there was something really wrong. It just seemed like
be okay.
I thought it was going to be okay. And then I was like, you know what? I remember like a pastor at the time, a church we were going to, had said, he kept talking about the scripture, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask. There's a scripture that says that. And I mean, it seems like common sense. But I went by myself in the room because all the voices were talking to me, do this, don't do this, right? So I was like, I need to know what to do. Should I take him? Is this like, what is going on? So I just kind of heard in my spirit, like, take you to the emergency room. You at this point it was pneumonia. They're gonna give you fluids. You're gonna need a transfusion. Like, everything was downloaded. Tell them this, tell them that, tell them. And I just was like, let's go. Packed up and go. I think I pretty much like had to. You were a grown child, and I think I pretty much had to either carry you or wheelchair. You were weak at that point.
Yeah, I probably was. I was out of it. I must have been out of it.
Yeah,
a lot of times when I was sick, I don't remember the process of getting to and from.
Yeah, you were kind of out of it, and
except for the time I had the thing in my ear. I don't the what that's a whole side story.
Oh yeah, that's another. So anyway,
apparently I grew up in a hospital.
Well, that's another thing with sickle cell. There are patients that were there constantly.
Yeah.
You were blessed initially to not
have to go through
that. But then the times that you ended up there, you were there for like long stretches.
Yeah.
But this particular time, this was, I want to say, maybe your first blood transfusion, because you needed 2 blood transfusions.
Wow.
So he goes in the hospital, and I'm telling them, and everything I said, at this point it was pneumonia. They're like, good thing you brought him when you did. Turned out this was the whole time that the swine flu stuff was going on.
Really?
So.
Oh yeah, I'm saying really. Like
yeah, so it turned out it was swine flu, and everybody was so concerned because you had children that were dying that had pre-existing conditions.
I remember that was the whole hype around it too. You got it? Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, it was almost like COVID. You know, like COVID was.
Except COVID, they were more like, if you get it, just get the vaccine. There's gonna be a vaccine. That's kind of how they were pushing. I feel like with the swine flu,
there was no specific vaccine for that.
Because we would have got or something.
I don't know, but
I don't even think we would have got it actually. After
so that you were in the hospital for maybe like 2 weeks, I want to say, but I felt confident, because I had to run back and forth between being in the hospital and seeing about the other kids and everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of just prayed, and I felt confident. Because I heard in my spirit that, you'll live and not die and declare the works of the Lord. Yeah. And I remember the scripture that I always used to tell you to speak over yourself. God sent his word and healed me.
Yeah.
And I was and I left, and you were so strong. I left, and I was coming back and forth, and I was confident, even though all this other stuff was happening, that you were going to be okay. So that was a confidence I can't even believe that I had at that time with everything going on. Yeah. Because I just was like, no, he's going to be okay. So that is what, long story short.
I never thought about that from your point of
view. Yeah,
honestly.
Long story short, though, that is when I had to say to you, because they were going to give you blood transfusion and everything. I had to explain to you, hey, here's what's going on. Here's why. Here's what you actually have. Because to that point, we hadn't limited you from doing whatever, being a normal kid.
No. You never did. I was gonna say, for some reason I knew that I was different.
Okay.
We can get into that in a later episode, but I knew I was always gonna be different in terms of just how I think. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how my body reacted to things, and in terms of how you tried to be so healthy with me.
Right. Yeah. I should have probably talked about that, because from the beginning it was just kind of like everything was hormone free.
Nothing. I didn't even know I knew what McDonald's was, but I never tried it until then. After 10 years old.
Yeah, you hadn't had any junk food really.
I wish I would have stayed then.
Me too. We were at our healthy
McDonald's now.
Everything was I did juice from everything. Everything was clean. It was clean eating, because I really was trying to give you a fighting chance.
And you did. You did though.
But we've come a long way, and we're working our way back, folks. We're working we're trying to get back to the basics.
To the cycle, yeah.
But so that was the near-death experience, and now you had to accommodate this whole new life and new acceptance of, all right, so this is what's going on, because you were an active kid, bouncing off the walls, literally. Yeah. See some of these scars? Some of these scars there, that's from being the active kid bouncing off the walls, literally bouncing off the walls. You were an active kid, so I can see your life without, and you were very athletic. I don't know if y'all can see, very athletic built, and that'll be for another. So I didn't know how your life would be if you didn't have that, which you did have that to a certain point, but that for you was kind of your. Did you accept that at 10 years old? Did you understand that? I guess I never, at the time, you were always, we talked a lot. Mm-hmm. Always, I would explain things to you, in a way that you can understand. Yeah. You didn't ask a lot of questions.
Wow, that's crazy that you said that,
because you didn't have a lot of.
I feel like I just understood.
I think we bought a book. I remember I gave you a book. And you read it. I remember, because whenever you did ask something, you would refer to, oh, I saw that it said such and such. So I think you probably had absorbed
a lot.
Once you found out the person that I know you to be, you probably went and just
because I never came.
You never came to
I
me.
only ask when I know somebody else might have other opinion that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I ask a lot, because I know a lot of people like just think about stuff that I wouldn't think of. But
right.
With that, I knew it had something to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And how I felt. So I think all the research I could have did, the ways I figured out, how I felt comfortable with it, could only come from me.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why I was so
because you were kind of
even still now.
Because you learned about it late, so it's like kind of like, okay, I've been living with this. So how has you? It's like you had to almost reflect back to go forward, like. Which is, I think we did you a disservice a little bit because you didn't.
Maybe, but then maybe it did benefit me in some sort of way because I might have been worried and scared.
If you were growing up knowing that. Maybe. Because you already had enough years to feel like a normal kid. Like, okay.
I just knew there was something different.
I feel a little stuff sometimes, but I'm good.
I think if I knew 100% that.
You would have been scared.
Not even scared. I think it would have taken an effect on my body because I think
you would have internalized it,
like the placebo effect or subconscious thoughts. I think those have an effect on your actual like health, especially when you're going through things at the time.
I could.
If you know,
I mean, I guess we must have thought that as parents. Really, from my point of view,
if you made it seem like I had Ebola, I would have thought I had Ebola. No, I'm just saying it that way.
Initially,
but then if you make it seem like I have the flu, I think I have the flu.
Right. Because if you don't know any better.
If I don't know any better,
but
I don't know any
initially,
better.
I think from your father's perspective, he was more in denial. Like, no, my son doesn't have that. Yes, he was definitely
100%.
And I think I was more like, well, I don't want that to be the thing that we're just speaking over him all the time, which is, it's kind of tricky, me being a spiritual person and being a Christian, because sometimes there's that pressure, not that we put on ourselves or think that people are putting on us, that you can't use practical wisdom. That has to be, that's something separate from spirituality. That, if you are, and this kind of segues into the main topic, that if you are saying that, yes, this is something that I'm challenged with, then you're not believing God for your healing. So for me, I think that was the battle I was in. I was like, well,
did
you feel that for me?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I could see you dealing with that.
Yeah.
Because then I had to, at some point too, I had to understand, okay, am I a God-fearing man that just goes around doing crazy stuff? Am I a crazy man that goes around, like, you know what I'm saying? You have to figure out the balance of,
because I'm dealing with this thing
like,
doesn't mean.
Does it, like, do I live my own life and follow my own way of healing myself or doing my own thing, or do I stick to all of the, okay, I have to pray at this time?
But why does it have to be mutually, like,
it doesn't?
It doesn't, and I think
I think the Bible in itself says that there has to be a strict line between that. It says there has to be a strict line between what you believe in and who you believe in.
Right.
But in order,
but God gives you wisdom, and then
and in order to get to that point too, I think God expects us to sin in order to get to that point and realize.
Well,
who we are.
You think expects us? Yeah, that's why there's salvation. Because
exactly, that's like, I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying that it is part of the plan.
It's part of the process.
The process.
But I wanted to say, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about myself in this segment, because I feel like there's too much going on. I see the time. Look at the time. I didn't think we could talk for this long. Oh my God.
I told you.
All right. We're gonna.
An hour will be easy.
Okay, we're gonna wrap it up soon. So
I think an hour is just another one of this.
So I wanted to say that I always try to, as your mom, be there for you, understand.
Yeah.
It was challenging because I would feel like sometimes you were angry, a lot. And I didn't know, and I would take it personally. And I didn't understand that process of what it felt like to be in physical pain that you felt like you had no control over.
I still wonder and think about that too, because I think that had a big effect on me.
I think it did, and I think it had an effect on our relationship initially. And I think it wasn't until recently where I was diagnosed with Chiari malformation, and you got to experience me going through pain.
Yeah.
And I was the one that was in pain, and everybody around me not understanding. And then I was the one that was
Felt like kind of
angry,
yeah.
and so I was going through all those emotions, and it was like a light bulb that went off. I was like, oh, I get it, that when you are in pain,
It almost makes you feel like an outcast.
You feel like you go through so many emotions.
Different emotions, yep.
And if you're not, if you don't have that support to be able to talk about it and where to put those emotions and how to process and deal with it, it can be.
It'll eat you up from the inside out, literally.
Yeah, and so that's when I think, in a weird way, our relationship, I started to understand you more and realize that you weren't just some like angry, rebellious.
But how about this? Do you start to understand the world more too, in a sense?
You do, because pain is a lot of people are dealing not just physical pain, but all kinds of pain. So let me stop there just to tell you all who may be watching what the heck Chiari malformation is, because I didn't know. You didn't know. I didn't even know. I was started 2017. I was experiencing pain in different parts of my body, my hip, random pains that I was just like not understanding, because from what I understood, I was healthy. I was in a process of like just trying to lose weight, working out every day, everything. And I was just like, okay, well, maybe I overdid it. So it started off thinking, well, maybe I overdid it. I went to the doctor, like, oh, it looks like might be hip bursitis. You were doing the treadmill and the incline. Okay, we thought we figured it out. Then I started getting back pain, neck pain, all kinds of pains. Still not figuring it out until I started getting headaches, which is not a pain that I ever, like, I'm not a headache person. You know what I mean?
I ever heard you say
I
that.
never would have. I never get headaches, but these headaches were like so intense. I went back to the doctor. I was like, I'm getting headaches now. That's when they did the MRI, and that is when they were like, oh, you have something called Chiari Malformation 1. And I was like, what? What is that? And what does that mean, right? So Chiari Malformation 1, I don't know if I'll be as eloquent as you were with describing what sickle cell was, but basically,
just try to put it in as simplest terms, so like
anybody I didn't know. So basically,
what scientist said that? Einstein? One of them said it. That if you want to explain something, explain it. Like, try to make it so that a kindergartner can understand it.
Okay, well, I can do that. I can do that.
That's the best way.
So it pretty much is, your brain is sitting in your skull, right? And most people, your skull has enough room. But with Chiari malformation, there's not enough room for your brain. And the rear part of your brain gets compressed by that rear part of your skull. So now that rear part, it could be by a little bit, it can be by a lot. That rear part of I think that's the cerebellum, it gets compressed down into now what is your spinal canal, that neck, into the neck part. And just that little bit can throw everything off. For some people, they can have that and no symptoms, right? Some people, they can have it small, no symptoms, big, no symptoms, whatever. That compression, the amount of the brain net. For me, it was like something like 6 millimeters, which is like, I want to, a millimeter is pretty small. I can't even, it's probably less than
6 millimeters is not even noticeable, really.
It's not noticeable. It's like less than a nail, I can't even show you but 6 millimeters is pretty small. The amount of the brain that was being compressed. But that threw my whole stuff off, because it was so bad where I had times where I could not sit and work. Just sitting, because what I realized is working, I was doing a lot of recruiting and a lot of reviewing of resumes and things. My head is down, so that is making the compression worse. So by the end of the day, I would be in such excruciating pain all down my spine, my gluteus maximus, my behind, my back, pain shooting to my hip, because the brain and the spine and the nervous system, all that stuff is all connected. If the fluid is not running properly, so it was just throwing everything off. And once I found out what it was, the hard part for me was like, now, like, what? First of all, what? Second of all, how? Because it's something how does that just happen? Like, how did one day I felt normal, and I could like literally remember the day that I stopped feeling normal.
You used to run track.
Like how I remember it was in September 2017. I stepped out of the car and like my hip kind of like gave way or something. It felt like, and from that day forward, never felt the same ever again. Still haven't ever felt normal or like I had ever felt before. So I went from feeling okay to then feeling like, oh my God, I felt like 100 years old. Like,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
And then, and trying to still be active, trying to do everything and realizing that I literally couldn't. And then the having to change my whole life because it was affecting me so much. Some days I couldn't walk. I got a whole brand new bed. Remember we got the new bed, the vibrating bed, and then the bed. I was working out of my bed, raising my legs up, doing everything, she researching.
Got the bed for that.
I was researching everything I needed.
Massaging, levitating bed. Yeah.
It's not levitating. How is it levitating?
You say Alakazam and then it goes.
Then I got like the chair, a different chair. I got the elevated, the thing to work off of. So I'm looking this way. So I did everything I could to help me get better. But the ultimate decision I had to make at the time was during pandemic. This is where stuff hit the fan for us because our relationship because you're dealing with your own pain. I'm dealing with my own pain.
I didn't know you were going through that then either.
I mean, because I still tried to be mom for everybody, but at the same time, it was like, whoo, this is kicking my butt. Yeah. But you're dealing with your pain. I'm dealing with your pain. Pandemic hits. We're at odds for lots of different reasons. Yeah. I'm probably mad at the world. Yeah. You're probably...
I was mad at the world.
Mad at the world.
I was trying to I was working 3 jobs at that time. I was trying to do mad stuff.
There was a lot going on. You had just started. Okay, so I'm back. And I forget where I ended off, but I was saying...
You ended at a good spot. You were talking about... the Chiari Malformation.
Chiari Malformation. We were at odds.
And how it made you feel during the pandemic. And
right.
How we were both dealing with a bunch of stuff.
Right. So we were dealing with a bunch of stuff. Pandemic hits.
Strain on our relationship.
Strain on our relationship. Strain on my physical body. Strain on... Actually, it's like during a time too where you were supposed to be somebody that was more at risk too, that had to... Yeah. But you didn't want to get vaccinated, so that's a whole.
First off, if y'all want to understand me as a person, I don't believe the hype. I don't.
Here we
all
go.
It is, nah. Get a vaccine. Why? What's in it? What you mean?
I know.
What you mean?
I
Why?
don't know where I was at that time with it. I don't know where I was at that time. I think honestly, if I'm honest, I think there were so many unknowns. Mm-hmm. That we were operating from a place of fear at one point. And that kind of what made our relationship,
I think so,
explode at one point too. And I think for me, honestly, I had already gotten COVID before all the hype came out.
Everybody got COVID at that point.
I think I had gotten it because right before the hype came out, I had just gotten over being sick, mm-hmm. and it was a lingering cough, and I almost passed out and stuff. And it neurologically started making my symptoms worse after I recuperated.
Really?
Yes. So I feel like that's what it was. But
I just remember the one time I knew Keith had it then.
Oh,
I knew 100%.
He definitely, because he was down and out for like a week and a half.
And he's never like that.
No.
So that's why I was looking at y'all like, you see how it's affected y'all. Y'all are normally never like this, bro. Like, I get why y'all wanted to core TV, but I'm like... Look,
I know,
but I understood it.
But by the time that at that point, it was so early. By the time that there was a test available for us to go take, we were negative. We didn't have it. But then when we got tested, I had myself tested and the kids tested. We all had the antibodies. So it's like at some point
those antibodies got inside of y'all
somehow, some kind of way. But I say all that to say that during that period of time, one of the things that I was struggling with is I have to accept that this is where I am now, that this is what's happening. I actually decided to step away from a job that I had that I loved. It was, I've always been able to do well for myself in human resources and recruiting. Great company. They were very accommodating. I was able to work from home. Yeah. Initially I was working full time. I reduced to part time. All of this was happening when I didn't really understand what was wrong with me at first. So it was so uncomfortable for me because I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me. All these things are happening. I need time, but I can't really say what's wrong with me until I did get a diagnosis, and I decided, you know what, I need to figure this out and put my healing process first. I stepped away and started my own small business, which I kind of already had a little bit, but wasn't focusing on, and started kind of a new life for myself. Which, honestly, it became a new life because I was able to have the flexibility to deal with the ebbs and flows of what I was going through physically. But then it opened my eyes to other things that I always wanted to do, like with the hosting and acting. And so on one hand, it's like very traumatic, but on the other hand, I had to repurpose and figure out how to navigate life differently. And I wanted to say this, that I had found online it's kind of like 8, I don't want to say steps because they're not necessarily linear, but 8 different processes you go through when you're dealing with chronic pain. And one of the first ones was accepting the pain, accepting what it is that's going on. And it talks about that part of that process is that accepting that it may be something that you have to deal with within your lifetime, and that you'll need to deal with pain or the possibility of it kind of every day. And that is challenging and hard. I know for you with sickle cell, you could do the bone marrow transplant that could potentially cure you, but there are risks with that, right?
Apparently it's not even a cure.
And I know for me,
it could literally just come right back.
Could it really? I don't know. I don't know the facts about that because we haven't looked into it.
Yeah, but then even I started talking to doctors and even some of my friends that are nurses and stuff, and then doing research and everything. The thing with the bone marrow is, one, your body can completely reject somebody else's bone marrow 100%. And my body is already in a state where it rejects a lot of things, or it doesn't accept things very easily. Okay. And then 2, it could just not work. Simply just not work.
And it's a big procedure to go.
It is. That's why I'm like, just to all of that, and it costs a lot of money too, just for it to not work. Like the chance of it not working is over like 10%. And I think it could be way better now, but at the time we were looking at.
But I mean, what would make you decide to do that? Do you feel like you've been able to manage? Because I look at you from the time that you learned about it, maybe for these last 3 or 4 years, I have observed you being able to manage. Maybe it's just maturity. You drink more water. You get more rest. You changed your lifestyle to
fit it almost. So not because I didn't want to succumb to it, but I had to change in order to live the life I kind of wanted.
So would you say that's part of accepting?
It literally was, because my juice intake, my sugar intake, my candy intake,
let's not even
everything intake was terrible.
Right.
Like, just terrible. Like,
boy, I'm chewing the heck out of this gum. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's comforting for me, but you did, and you did that. Why? What?
I think my body just decided
your body was just
day,
like,
nah, we can't. Because I started getting to a point where I would wake up tired. When you wake up tired, you already know, like, okay, something's wrong. Right. I just slept for right
for how many hours?
And you're waking up. Oh, I need to go back to sleep. Like, when you're doing that, then you know there's obviously something you need to fix within your body. But it started with that, and then it started. I would go through half the day, and then all of a sudden, like normal naps, how you would. Yeah. But it wasn't tiredness or anything like that. It would just be almost like a fatigue in a sense. Like, oh, I need to sit down. Yeah. And before I would play ball for hours.
Got you.
Nothing.
So you realize that if I don't do something different to help myself,
in a sense, yeah.
Well, you know what? And that's how
yeah.
I can relate to that. Even though to you, I might already be old, but for me, I'm like, I was moving and shaking.
That's what I'm saying.
I went from
even grandma always moving around.
Yeah, I went
something.
from feeling youthful to feeling old because with the thing about Chiari is that nobody can see it. You can't I have, but I'm walking at times like there is, you know, there is a physical disability, but you can't see it. But the symptoms vary for different times and different people.
The same thing with the sickle cell.
Like the one symptom that when I found out what I had and I started reading more about it, I was like, oh, that's why. I would have difficulty with swallowing. Remember I would gag sometimes on things?
You told me that.
You guys would be like, what's wrong? And
we didn't believe it at first.
No, I would be like choking almost.
No, but then now that I see it in KJ though.
Gagging?
Remember his thing is different, a little bit different. His ability to swallow. I think that's a whole different issue.
We might have to find out about that. But it was difficulty swallowing. And I would be literally nervous to eat certain things, salad, you know, things that I could possibly like choke on and stuff, because I had these episodes before several times, but not enough, you know, like maybe it would happen once or twice a month, not enough for me to think there was something necessarily wrong, except that there was something wrong. Like I would have difficulty swallowing, but I got checked, ENT, but there was nothing wrong with my esophagus and nothing wrong with the.
And normally that's what it is. Normally it's a
there was
reflex
no,
within your
there
muscles
wasn't. But it's a reflex because of the nerves and stuff. So different types of just crazy, wild things, right? So we are okay. We're gonna wrap it up.
No, that's because I told him I might need him to record some content for me.
Okay, but we're gonna wrap it up. Where do we want to leave this? Because the point of this video was just to kind of introduce ourselves, our stories, I guess, preliminarily, so you know who we are.
Yeah. The
plan for us and what we hope is that by sharing our lives and our process, and then we're going to be talking to other people like doctors, regular people, whoever we come across in our lives and whoever we reach out to give more information to. We hope to share our stories, other people's stories, things from experts that can help. Because for us, I know when we have been going through our process, a lot of what has helped us is being able to look at other people's stories and to pull from that. So we want to be as real as possible and let people know that this process of, you know, there's a statistic that says over 50 million Americans are dealing with some type of chronic pain. So if you guys are out there, we want to just send hope that, you know, you're not alone. Whether it's physical, emotional, mental, whatever kind of pain, it is not a process that is, it's not easy. And everybody's process may look a little bit different, but it is a process. One day you might be doing better, another day not so much, but it is a process. And we want to kind of navigate that process together. And we want to show you what our life looks like and show you how we're growing, how we are doing better, where we might struggle. And we want to do it, show you a picture of our lives and how we can navigate it. You know, we're going to talk about fun things that we do, because having fun is important. That's something that I was just recently reminded by a friend of mine that asked me, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, you know, fun is part of the equation, right? So what are your last words, Noah? What do you hope that people will get from this channel? You know, we'll talk about these important steps of managing pain and all of that, but what else do you hope?
I don't know. Well, I do know. I 100% know. But it's whether or not people will be willing to accept it or not. I want people to understand that.
Okay.
At the end of the day, everybody's different. Whether you have a chronic illness, whether you don't, whether your brain is normal, quote unquote, what people consider, or just on the spectrum, either way, whatever. It's just whether you're big, little, I don't know, whatever you want to say, light, dark, this and that. Like there's so many things that you can say is different, and and so many ways that you can try to hinder somebody or put them down. But I just wish, like, there's one thing that could come out of anything that we do, that there will be more positivity.
Okay.
In a sense that we'll understand that, yes, like, what you're going through might be different than me, but at the same time, we're still people.
Yeah.
And
at the core of it, there's more similarities.
There's more similarities than differences with us. Like, like we can still, like, we want to talk about our story, and our story is regarding chronic illnesses, right? But there's people that want to tell their story in general that just doesn't have anything to do with that, but they still want to be heard. Yeah. So that's a similarity right there. People just want to tell their story and to be heard. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, if we can all do that.
Yeah. If you can all, and then if you can all, if anybody listening can take from our story and be encouraged, and
go help somebody else.
Go help somebody else.
Just all the things that make it, like, we know what at the end of the day what will make us feel better, what will make somebody else feel better. It's not like I gotta tell you as people, you gotta tell anybody else. You know.
But one thing I do want to say is, through all the difficulties and things that we both have been through, that we'll talk about more, is that this has also given us the opportunity to do really cool things together. Yeah. You know, like we just did a commercial together. Yeah. You know, so it's put us more in tune with each other and our gifts and things that we want to do. And so difficult situations, you know, you don't wish for them. You know, you're not hoping bring on the difficult situations, but this whole experience with this channel, Painful Process, is to understand that there is a process, and there's things you can learn in the process, and there's things that you can take and mold and create something beautiful from. I want to leave you with this, and then this is something that a friend of mine texted that I thought was a good perspective to have. Initially, I wouldn't have thought so, but you know, it says sometimes the goal is not how do I get rid of the suffering or how do I get rid of the pain? Because that was us like analyzing. We got to fix this. This is, you know, get rid of it, get past it, right? But it's how do I faithfully endure the situation? We overcome by finding peace with God in the middle of the situation. And this is part of our process of kind of finding peace and still finding joy, still finding contentment in the midst of this process. And then in the hot yoga class I was taking yesterday, I wrote down something that the instructor said, work with what you woke up with today, right? And that message is for both of us, because sometimes we are so like analytical, we're thinking about things that we want to do, but to be present. So work with what you woke up with today, whatever state you're in today. Acknowledge that. Acknowledge it where you are now. Be present. Work with the positive things that are going on. Acknowledge the things that are not positive, and try to learn from that and try to get help for that. But that's all that I think we have to say for today. Yeah. The next episode is going to be how to take an active role in your own recovery. And I think that's going to be good, because that we're going to talk about doctor's appointment. We just had our annual physicals. We did that together. Yeah. So we'll be talking about how to take a more active role. But until next time, peace.